What's up, man? It's your boy Lamar here on the Path Forward podcast. And, it's late night and I'm just reading my word. And I was just really encouraged by something that I read. It's a story that we all know. And I felt like it was important that I share it with y'all, man. It's the story of the prodigal son. So I'm going to get into it. It's Luke chapter 15, 11 through 32. And, I got 3 points that I really want to drive home to you guys. And I hope it blesses you the way it blesses me. And point one about the story of the prodigal son. And if you never really heard the story of the prodigal son, this is a very, very, I don't want to say overly used, but the church uses this parable a lot. Jesus was teaching this parable to his disciples. One thing about Jesus is Jesus always gave you a deep example. He never just taught with straight facts and knowledge. He always would try to break it down to you on a level that you could understand. That's one thing I loved about Jesus. He would reach you where you are. He traveled with sinners. He traveled with people that wasn't perfect. So he would reach them in practical manners. That's one thing I love about Jesus. So, an overall summary of the prodigal son story is the prodigal son was the youngest son, and he went to his dad and he asked his dad for his inheritance early. Now that's kind of strange because you normally don't get your inheritance till after your father or your mother or your loved one dies. Like, to ask for your inheritance while they're living is kind of disrespectful. It's kind of disrespectful, So imagine going up to your parents and be like, "Yo, that stuff you're leaving for me in the will, let me get that." Right? Your parents look at you like you're crazy, but the prodigal son was bold, apparently, and he did that. So he asked for his inheritance right away. The thing that really blows my mind is the father gave it to him. I can't imagine me going to my dad and saying, "Yo, Dad, I know you're going to leave me the whip. I know you're going to leave me the house. Can I get that now?" Like, that's kind of wild, but he gave it to him. So he took his inheritance and went crazy, went to a whole nother country and just started going wild, spending his money, spending his inheritance. He even joined citizenship to a whole nother country that he wasn't a part of. And that's where it got wild. So point one, that I wanna take the parable that Jesus gave us and put it in terms that we can understand, because on the path forward, as we try to get closer to Jesus and try to get closer to God, it's one thing just to read the word, but we have to understand what we're reading. We have to really understand it in order for it to become alive in us. But first and foremost, you got to start with reading. And then with reading, you can pray for understanding. That this word is not so complicated that I can understand it and you can't. I'm no better than you. I'm no better than you. You're capable of understanding this word too. So I'm going to start with point one. And point one is distance brings destruction. As the son left his father, his choices spiraled downward. Now, you can relate that to yourself as a Christian. Whenever we get distant from God and we start praying less, we start reading the word less, and then we start being less obedient, the worse our decision makers become. Like, I can look at any point in any time in my life, and when I was making some of the worst choices in my life, I was very, very distant from God. I wasn't going to church. I wasn't reading my Bible. We always look at ourselves and say, "How did I end up here?" A lot of times we end up here because we're far away from God. Sin always promises freedom, but it always delivers bondage. Distance from God doesn't make us independent. It makes us vulnerable. That's something you have to remember. And being away from God is a scary place because that's where our protection comes from. That's where our help come from. And if you really think into some of the worst times in your life, that's where your right mind comes from. Like, that's something that old folks say all the time. Like, God can keep you in your right mind. The older you get, the more you'll understand that saying. And when you hear the story and you see just how bad it really got, like, the prodigal son ended up eating the leftovers that pigs ate, the slop. Not the good stuff, but the leftovers of the leftovers. That's sad, man. And while he was doing that, he came to himself. He came to himself. And that's point 2, the power of remembering. The turning point for him wasn't when his money ran out, because after his money ran out, he still joined citizenship to another country he didn't belong of. And it wasn't even when the famine came, because if you read the word, you'll see that there was a famine in the land, like people were starving. And that wasn't enough to make him turn around. Like his circumstance didn't make him turn around. Sometimes stuff get real bad, and the bad stuff don't always make us turn around. We'll just start drinking more. We'll start smoking more. Like we'll get deeper sometimes. What made him turn around was remembering who his father was. In the word, it specifically says that as he was eating the slop and the leftovers that the pigs ate, he thought to himself about the servants that his father had. Apparently his father was balling, y'all. He thought about the servants that his father had, and said, I'm here eating the lowest of the low while my dad has servants that are living better than me. AKA, he remembered who his father was. That was his turning point. Breakthrough happens the moment you remember who God is and who you are to him. That's powerful, man. Like, you have to remember who God is, no matter how bad it's getting, no matter how low it's getting. Remember who God is. And point 3 is the most beautiful part of it all. It makes me emotional even thinking about it, because point 3 is the father was already waiting for him. The father wasn't angry with him when he decided to come back home, because once he remembered who his father was, he decided to come back home. And he was nervous about it. But the father wasn't surprised. The father wasn't angry in the way that we would expect. He wasn't even indifferent with him. He was waiting for him and watching for his son's return. It said that he saw his son coming from a long way off. That means he was waiting and watching. That's God with us. Always anticipating our comeback, arms wide open. No matter how far you run, God has already positioned himself for your return, man. Ain't no sin too deep. Ain't no sin too deep. Ain't no too much guilt. Ain't too much shame that you can't return to God. You can always return to God. And just think about yourself. Where are you right now? Are you running away? Are you making choices in the famine fields? Are you ready to remember, return, and rise again? God doesn't just forgive, he restores. You know, like when the prodigal son came back, his father, despite of what he did, he put a robe on him and a ring on him and threw a feast for him. You know, the path forward is not away from God. It's back to him. And the good news is he's been waiting for you. He's been waiting for you. He's been waiting for you the whole time.